Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS. My name is Abhijit. Today is 2nd April 2024 and we are here to discuss daily news analysis. As a part of this daily news analysis, our first article will be the PMLA, a law that has lost its way. This article is discussing about Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Second article will be Solar Surge. This article is discussing about a policy which is related with the manufacturing of solar panels in India. Along with this policy, we will be also discussing two major schemes which are associated with solar energy in India. Third article is why Supreme Court barred unregulated soil extraction for linear projects. So what are linear projects and what is the chronology in this regard we will be discussing. Fourth article will be RBI at 90. This article is discussing about the history of RBI, that is Reserve Bank of India. And the last article will be NPPA revises ceiling prices of over 900 drug formulations. So let's start our discussion. So the first article for today's discussion is the PMLA, that stands for Prevention of Money Laundering Act. That is a law that has lost its way according to this article. As per this article, or as per the author, the raison d'etre of the PMLA was something different. And now, with the help of certain amendments to PMLA, it has changed its nature to another state, right? So, what was the raison d'etre of PMLA? It is the crime of laundering of a huge volume of black money generated from international drug trade and the specter of destabilization of international economy, right? But we will be looking in the recent amendments or the amendments done to the PMLA, which has changed its nature and which is deviating its path from its real inception, right? Why this article is important? Because this article is discussing about PMLA, which was enacted to ensure or to prevent the money laundering, which is directly associated with internal security. Under GS paper 3, you can see this topic, challenges to internal security, which is directly mentioning money laundering and its prevention. In previous year as well, in 2021, UPSC asked question which is related with the topic money laundering, and you can expect this type of question or critical analysis of PMLA in upcoming future as well. What is the context? Context is, or as per the article, the context is there is a most serious aspect of PMLA is the inclusion of offenses through certain amendments which have nothing to do with the original motive. So raison d'etre was something different. With the help of certain amendments, we have included certain offenses which has nothing to do with the original motive of the act. What was the original intent of PMLA? We have seen that money generated from the international drug trafficking, and which is a threat or perceived threat which is posing against the economies as well as the national sovereignty. So how this evolved, let's see this thing. It all started with 1988 United Nations Convention against illicit trafficking in narcotics and psychotropic substances, right? And in 1989, FATF was formed. FATF means Financial Action Task Force. This Financial Action Task Force was established by 7 industrialized countries. Along with that, there is a committee, Basel Committee, and this committee was established by IMF, and this committee has given a statement of principle in 1989. Right? All these three things have urged countries or nations to two things. First, national level legislation along with certain regulatory body plus international cooperation to combat money laundering, right? Subsequently, in 1990, United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution which is known as Political Declaration and Global Program of Action in 1990, right? And this United Nations General Assembly resolution also urged for these two things. In response to that, India also enacted an act that is known as PMLA, and under which it tried to prevent, protect, and detect the money laundering generated from the international drug trade, right? And under which it has created two major entities, that is Enforcement Directorate and second is FIUIND, that is Financial Intelligence Unit India and Enforcement Directorate. This Enforcement Directorate is tasked with investigation, and this FIUIND is tasked to collect and analyze the financial intelligence. Right? Okay. So this was the India's legislative response, and which was initially focusing on the black money or the huge amount of black money generated from international drug trafficking, right? But with due course of time, we have included several offenses which were directly or indirectly related with the money laundering, right? And because of this inclusion of various offenses, what was happening, it was affecting the individuals which are not only associated directly to these offenses, but if at all they are tangentially included, they were under the purview of this PMLA, right? So what was happening? There was a global consensus which wanted or which urged national level, state or national level governments to form a legislation and certain bodies to prevent money laundering, money which is generated from the drug trafficking. Now national implementation is national implementation at India level was deviated from the global consensus, and which is a concern as per this article. What are those concerns? We'll be looking in a couple of minutes. But how this PMLA was enacted? This enacted with the help of Article 253. What is Article 253? To fulfill international obligation, Parliament can enact laws even on the state subject, right? And there is a item number 13 in the union list that states that central level government can participate in international cooperation. So with the help of these two things and the international convention that we have discussed, such as United Nations Convention against illicit trafficking in narcotics and psychotropic substances, and the Political Declaration and Global Program of Action by the UNGA 1990. So with the help of all these things, government had enacted PMLA, right? And this initial enactment of PMLA had a scope which was defined in international context. But with due course of time, we have amended PMLA time to time, and we have included several offenses which had nothing to do with the money laundering generated from the drug trafficking or international drug trafficking, which broadened the scope of the implementation of this scheme or this act, which is affecting not only the individual's right but also suppressing the dissent in recent time, right? How this article is giving an example. It is giving an example that we have equated diverse offenses with the money laundering. For example, corruption. Now, corruption is also involved in this PMLA, and Enforcement Directorate is tasked to investigate the corruption cases, and now this corruption is equated with the money laundering, and this is the biggest problem of the implementation of PMLA, right? There's also one problem which was identified, or which is identified in this article, that is presumption of guilt. In general jurisprudence, there is a practice that if you are presuming some person as guilt, initially or traditionally, it was assumed that the person is innocent, or there is a presumption of innocence, right? So initially, a person will be believed as innocent, and now it's the responsibility of investigating officers or agencies to prove that person as guilty. But under this PMLA Act, there is a presumption of guilt. Already we have presumed that that person which is under the PMLA is guilty, and now this person has to prove that this person or that accused person is not guilty, right? And it is creating a judicial dilemma in providing the bail, because without substantial proof of innocence, the judiciary cannot give them or grant them bail, and this is creating problem in getting the bail, which is the part of our constitutional right, right? How? Let's see this bail provision. The section 45 of PMLA has certain political significance because PMLA hold considerable political importance in India. It reflects broader debates about legal rights and state power. How? If you are assuming as you or that particular person is already guilty, now that person has to prove or has to give substantial evidence of its innocence, without which judiciary cannot give the bail. That is creating a dichotomy between the legal rights and the state power, right? It is against the constitutional right, which is violating the Article 14 and Article 21. How? The Supreme Court, in the case of Nikesh Tarachan Shah versus Union of India, found out that Section 45 as unconstitutional. But later on, what was happening? Central government has amended the act, that PMLA Act, and following the Supreme Court decision, the Indian Parliament amended Section 45 to address the constitutional concern raised, reasserting the provision's significance. Now, this Section 45 is functional. It's not unconstitutional. And later in 2022, in Vijay Mandalan Chaudhary versus Union of India, three-judge bench led by Justice A.M. Khaniwakar upheld the amended Section 45. Now, Section 45 is now no more unconstitutional. But the purpose of PMLA was to prevent money laundering and protecting the economy from instability caused by illicit financial flows, especially from the drug trafficking and other serious crimes such as terror financing. But inclusion of lesser offenses the court noted that the inclusion of various offences under the PMLA ambit falls within the legislative policy, and even if these offences are considered less serious, right? So at the same time, legislature is including several petty offences under the ambit of PMLA, and judiciary is also legitimizing that these offences can be included. There is also problem that we have discussed, that there is a problem in front of judiciary to grant the bail, because judiciary cannot grant bail under the PMLA if there is no substantial evidence of innocence, right? There's also historical judicial perspective, that is Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer remarks from 1978 emphasized the importance of personal liberty and the careful judicial exercise of power in denying bail, highlighting a contrast with the current approach under the PMLA. So this was the overall issue discussed in the article. Now we can see more challenges in the interpretation of PMLA and the implementation of PMLA. How? The constitutional values, it is against the constitutional values that discussion around section 45 of PMLA underscores ongoing tension between efforts to combat money laundering and the protection of constitutional rights, particularly personal liberty and the presumption of innocence. Also, there is a misuse of central agencies to curb the dissent, to curb the opposition, as per certain reports as well as certain intellectuals. There's also provision of seizing of asset. This PMLA is authorizing enforcement directorate and other investigating agency to seize the asset, and which is against the personal liberty. There's also argument that such type of raids by the enforcement directorate are often politically motivated. There's also opacity in charges, which is forced by the intelligence or investigating agencies. There is a vagueness over evidences as well, because now it's not responsibility of investigating agencies to give the evidences, rather it's the responsibility of the accused to get the bail, right? And because of which they are, or the intelligence agencies are argued, or they are blamed as that they are harassing common people or the opposition party, and this is against the individual liberty. Next article is solar surge. This article is discussing about the policy for the manufacturing of solar products in India. Why this article is important? Because this article is discussing about the solar photovoltaic modules order 2019, and in GS paper 3 there is a topic economic development and infrastructure which is associated with this article. Previously UPSC has asked questions with respect to the solar power or this topic. For example, in 2015 they have asked to what factors can be recent dramatic fall in the equipment cost and tariff of solar energy be attributed. So this is also associated with the manufacturing of solar products in India. What is the context? The center has released a policy of manufacturers of solar photovoltaic modules requirement for compulsory registration order 2019, which is aimed at fostering domestic solar manufacturing in India. What about solar photovoltaic modules order 2019? Government policy to regulate manufacturing of solar plants in India or panels in India. It mandates module makers to undergo inspection of their manufacturing facilities by the NISC, that is National Institute for Solar Energy. That means with this order, government is again becoming or again coming to the license Raj. It certifies a company as a legitimate solar panel manufacturer within India, enabling eligibility to participate in government tenders for solar projects. Such list also restricts import from China and other foreign sources. China comprises 80% of the global supply amid the downturn in the diplomatic relationship. What about NISC? It's an autonomous specialized institute under the MNRE, that is Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. What are the major objectives of this NISC? To function as a national research organization for undertaking R&D, apex organization for testing, certification and development of specification and standards, to create a skilled manpower and offer consultancy services. What about India's target of solar power generation? 50% of cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy resources by 2030. This data is important. This requires at least 280 gigawatt from solar power by 2030, according to report by Council of Energy, Environment and Water CEEW. Approximately 25 crore households in India have the potential to deploy 637 gigawatt of solar energy on rooftops. There are certain initiatives including Pradhan Mantri Suryodaya Yojana, which is focusing on individual households, and currently the residential sector accounts only 20% of the rooftop solar installation, presenting a vast untapped potential. There's another scheme which is known as Pradhan Mantri Kisan Urja Suraksha Evam Utthan Mahabhiyan, that is PM Kusum, which is focusing on developing solar energy with the help of farming, or which is a confluence of farming and as well as the solar energy, which is aiming to increase the wealth or income of the farmers. To add solar capacity of 30,800 megawatt by 2022 with the total central financial support of 34,422 crore. It has three components, A, B and C. A talks about solar capacity by installation of small solar power plants of capacity up to 2 megawatt. Second component B, it's focusing on the stand-alone solar powered agricultural pumps. And third component C, which is focusing on grid connected agricultural pumps. Next article is why Supreme Court barred unregulated soil extraction for linear projects. These linear projects are those infrastructural projects which takes a lot of area, which is covered in a lot of area, and which are linear in nature. For example, road, railway. So such type of infrastructural development are termed as linear projects. To make such infrastructural projects, we need certain alteration on earth surface. That is, we have to either extract the soil or we have to put certain soil, right? For which earlier it is imperative for the project holder to get a certification or environmental clearance. Now, Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, they exempted such type of environmental clearances for soil extraction for such type of linear projects. Supreme Court barred this unregulated soil extraction recently. Why this article is important? Firstly, because it is mentioning environmental clearance, and secondly, it is discussing about NGT. There's a topic in GS paper 3, environmental impact assessment, which is related with this article. Let's see the previous year question. What are the consequences of illegal mining? Discuss the Ministry of Environment and Forest concept of go and no go zones for coal mining sector. So you can expect such type of question which are related with the soil extraction and environmental clearances associated with such type of soil extraction and linear projects, right? What is the context? Supreme Court struck down notification by the Environment Ministry in March 2020 exempting extraction of ordinary earth for linear projects from obtaining environmental clearances, right? What is the background? Initially, NGT, the NGT has argued that this is a violation of Article 14. What is the violation of Article 14? So if you are exempting certain projects without any substantial logic or any evidence from any environmental clearances which can affect the lives of people or our ecology, so it is arbitrary in nature, and that is why these type of exemptions are violative of Article 14, right? The NGT directed ministry to review the exemption within 3 months, but the ministry delayed this action. As the ministry delayed action, the matter actually went to Supreme Court, and now Supreme Court has barred this exemption. The Supreme Court also criticized the exemption as blanket and lacking defined guidelines, deeming it arbitrary and violative of Article 14. The court also found fault with the lack of definition for linear projects and absence of specified guidelines for extraction quantity and the area. There is also inadequacy of ministry's response that provoked Supreme Court to impose such bar, right? What are the examples of scrutinized exemptions? Similar exemptions under the Ministry or Environment Protection Act have faced judicial scrutiny in the past as well. Instances include exemption for building and construction activities, granting ex post facto EC to projects, and amnesty windows for projects under violation categories. The Kerala High Court, for instance, quashed a 2014 notification exempting educational institution and industrial set from obtaining environmental clearance if their built-up area exceeds 20,000 square meter. What about NGT? NGT is a statutory body. This part is important for prelims exam that deals with expeditious disposal of cases related to environmental protection and other natural resources. It was set up under the NGT Act 2010. Next article is RBI at 90 snapshots from history. This article is discussing about the history of Reserve Bank of India. Sometimes the decisions taken by RBI or the recommendations given by RBI was in antagonism with the decision taken by the central government, but how this RBI is effectively protecting the interest of people of India and the economy of India, we'll be discussing in this article. Why this article is important? Because RBI Monetary Policy Committee and specifically the reforms of 1991, which we will be looking in this article. Also, there are certain factual information that you can garner from this article which is important for our prelims examination. In GS paper 3, there's a topic Indian economy issues relating to planning and mobilization, which is also associated with this article. Previously, UPSC has asked this question or such type of question which is associated with RBI and which is very factual in nature. So you can see in 2021, UPSC has asked question with respect to RBI. So you can expect in future as well. What is the context? This article is arguing that for 90 years, the Reserve Bank of India has achieved great things. Sometimes it has had a disagreement with the central government, but it has always stood firm in the protecting its responsibilities. What are the responsibilities? To protect the Indian banking system, Indian economy, as well as the rights of individual in India, right? So let's see the origin and formation of RBI. It was established through RBI Act of 1934. This act, this information is important from prelims point of view, based on the recommendation of Hilton Young Commission. This commission is important. It commenced operation with a share capital of 5 crore. Initially, the central office of the RBI was set up in the Kolkata, but was permanently shifted to Mumbai in 1937. So these informations can be, this trivial information can be asked in UPSC prelims. What about the ownership? Initially privately owned, the RBI was nationalized in 1949 coming completely owned by the government of India. It has mandate or it has responsibility for the control, issuance and the maintenance of supply of currency. This is important. It also manages country's main payment system, ensuring smooth and efficient transaction. Along with that, it is also functioning as a banker's bank, right? So let's see the 90 years of RBI. Early years 1934 to 1935, the legislation enacted in March 1934, which established RBI and which is officially established on April 1st, 1935, with operational provisions effective from January 1st, 1935. Sir Osborne Arkell Smith appointed as the first governor, succeeded by Sir C.D. Deshmukh. What about the reforms of 1991? Economic crisis prompts significant reforms in India's financial sector. Measures implemented include gold transfer, rupee devaluation, trade liberalization, deregulation of interest rates, and banking reforms. What was the impact? It increased the flexibility in trade, issuance of new private bank licenses, and reshaping the financial landscape. There's also debate between Manmohan and or within the Manmohan and Pranab era. The governor Manmohan Singh faces challenges including clashes with Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee, the tension over RBI autonomy versus government directives, the conflicts on key policy matters including licensing of foreign banks and financial institution regulation. But later on, RBI accepted the recommendation given by the central government. There's also debate between Subbarao Patel versus government. It conflicts over surplus dividends and policy directions between Governor Subbarao Patel and the government. The challenges in maintaining central bank independence while aligning with government objective. 2008, we witnessed a global crisis in demand, and there's also substantial change in the policy at the national and international level. That time, we also witnessed a conflict between RBI and the central government. Effective policies helped India navigate through the global financial crisis of 2008, including capital controls and regulatory reforms. Post-crisis measures by Governor Subbarao include interest rate cut and liquidity injection to stimulate demand and investment. During Raghuram Rajan's tenure, there was also certain issues. Emphasis on reforms such as internationalization of rupee, inflation-linked bond, and liberalization measures for banks. There was challenges during demonetization period tested RBI's credibility as well. Pursuit of financial reforms and modernization agenda was also there. During COVID-19 pandemic, the Governor Shadikant Das implements accommodative policies to revive economic activity amidst pandemic. Measures include interest rate cuts and liquidity support, which was accommodative policy leads to inflation spike, promoting RBI to raise interest rate for inflation management. So all these things were the history of RBI, which was discussed in this article. Last article for today's discussion is NPPA, that is National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. It revises ceiling prices of over 900 drug formulations. This article is important from prelims point of view, and these drugs are covered under essential medicines. Why this article is important? Because this article is discussing about National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. In GS paper 2, there's a topic statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial body and the government policies and interventions for development in various sectors, including health, right? So previously UPSC has asked such type of question like India protecting traditional knowledge of medicine. So you can expect such type of question in future as well. What is the context? Starting with April 1st, the cost of antibiotics and painkiller has seen a slight rise. This is just a routine process, but there are several acts and authorities which is there or which is mentioned in this article. That is why we are discussing here, right? And that is National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. This authority is tasked with the pricing control of such medicines which is under essential medicines, including antibiotics and painkillers, and which have gone up a tiny bit of 0.0055% in April 2024. What is the rationale behind the small increment in the prices? It's just a routine process, and we are witnessing a rise in the cost of raw material. That is why NPPA is allowing companies to raise the prices. This is a routine adjustment, and it's a much smaller increase in compared to the previous increase or previous hikes, right? What about National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority? It's an autonomous and statutory body established under the Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizers, which is responsible for regulating the prices of pharmaceutical drugs in India to ensure that they are affordable and accessible to the general public. How we calculate price hike? The price hike of 0.0051% is based on the annual change in the WPI, that is Wholesale Price Index, during the calendar year 2023 and the corresponding period of 2022. The WPI data is provided by the Office of Economic Advisor, Department of Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The WPI is a measure of the average change in the prices of goods at the wholesale level or primary markets over the period of time. This is which is different from CPI, that is Consumer Price Index, which is in the retail market or change in the retail market. It tracks the wholesale prices of the commodities across the different sectors and industries like agriculture, fuel, power, manufacturing, etc. The base year for the calculation is 2011-12. WPI is used as an important measure of inflation and the wholesale level or for the producer and manufacturer. What are the past trends that we have seen? Earlier, there was a hike of 12%, 10%, and in comparison to that, it's a very minuscule increase in the prices of essential drugs, right? This drug, if we talk about the regulation of drug pricing, India currently has approximately 400 molecules and 960 formulation. What are those molecules and formulation? Molecules are APIs, that is active pharmaceutical ingredients, and if we add this API with non-active pharmaceutical ingredients, it becomes formulations. The prices of non-essential drugs are also monitored by the government. The NPPA follows the Drug Price Control Order, which allows price hike in line with the changes in the WPI index. The annual price hikes for drugs is listed in the NLEM are based on the WPI itself. The 400 molecules, we have already seen that molecules refers to the active pharmaceutical ingredients or chemical compounds that are used in the production of various drugs. However, 960 formulations refers to the specific combination of these APIs along with the other inactive ingredients, right? So far, we have discussed all the important articles for today. Let's do some practice question. First question is, consider the following statements. National Green Tribunal is a statutory body, yes, that deals with the expeditious disposal of cases related to environmental protection and other natural resources. That is the correct option. It was set up under the Environmental Protection Act, no, NGT Act 2010. So answer will be A part. Consider the following statements regarding PMLA. Under PMLA, it is the responsibility of the financial institutions and intermediaries to maintain detailed records of transactions, provide specific transaction information to FIUIND director, and verify identities of their clients and beneficial owners. That is a correct statement. Enforcement Directorate ED is tasked with enforcing PMLA's provisions and investigating related offenses. That is also correct. C part will be the correct answer. Next question is, with reference to neem tree, consider the following statements. Neem oil can be used in as a pesticide to control the proliferation of some species of insects and mites. That is correct statement. Neem seeds are used in the manufacturing of biofuels and hospital detergents. So far we are not able to see as such example of neem seeds, but in future that there is a possibility, but so far we haven't seen such type of example. So second statement is not correct. If instead of writing R, if we use can, that can be correct answer. Neem oil has application in pharmaceutical industry. That is a correct statement. C part will be the correct answer. Consider the following statements regarding the Reserve Bank of India. It was established through the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. That is a correct statement. It is based on the recommendation of Hilton Young Commission. That is also correct. It commenced operations with the share of capital of rupees 5 crore. That is also correct. How many of the above statement are correct? All three are the correct statement. Which of the following were implemented as a part of 1991 economic reforms in India? Nationalization of major industries. No, way before 1991, we had nationalized various industries, including banking. And also, if we are asking about LPG, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization, it includes privatization. So nationalization is against the privatization. So that is why this statement is incorrect. Increased government control over foreign trade. No, we have opened our market. So that is also incorrect statement. Devaluation of the rupee and trade liberalization. That is correct statement. Setting fixed interest rate for all loans. That is incorrect. So answer will be C part. Now, mains practice question. Evaluate the implications of recently approved models and manufacturers of solar photovoltaic modules order 2019 on India's solar power sector. So we have discussed the order that the government of India has recently published, and what are the implication of this order on the national solar power sector. We have to evaluate this thing, right, and critically analyze the potential challenges and benefits of this policy that may have on the affordability and quality of solar power in India, that we have to discuss. In introduction, we can begin with an overview of the significance of renewable energy for India, specifically for the solar power, and emphasizing the role of solar energy in the country's energy sector. We have to mention here the INDC, that is nationally determined contribution that we have promised for the Paris Agreement. In the body part, we need to mention the policy overview. We have to explain how this policy is aligned with the national renewable energy targets, and then we have to show the positive impacts of this policy on the manufacturing industry, domestic manufacturers, as well as how it will reduce our dependency on the foreign countries, that is import dynamics, how it is going to affect the import dynamics. In conclusion, we can conclude by reiterating the significance of the policy in shaping India's solar power landscape, emphasizing the importance of careful implementation and ongoing evaluation to ensure that policy contributes effectively to India's renewable energy objectives while supporting economic growth and sustainability. So through this, we are concluding our discussion. If you like our initiative, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much.